the moment that I turned the camera, the filming camera towards him, it became pretty difficult to not feel, you know, that he wanted to stage himself or to edit himself about what he was going to say or not say. So a little bit of the spontaneity was lost. And it was difficult. It was an interesting challenge to figure out how to portray him when he's so reluctant to speak about himself or his work, because he, as I was saying before, he does it so well through still images and also moving images. So this clip is an illustration of one of those moments where we candidly share, you know, the space like we usually do, and some unexpected came up, which is his comments, you know, from his brilliant mind and sense of humor. And this is one of those moments.
That's an interesting idea. An interview where nobody speaks. I like that. It sounds like something that Andy Warhol might have done. I know he made a movie about the Empire State Building, which is 12 hours long, and there is no movement of the camera. It's just set camera on the building. It's very zen. So maybe we should partially do that. We just sit in front of the camera and say absolutely nothing for a period.
Okay. Anyway, that was, you know, I was thinking while watching it one more time, you know, this is also the result of one of those, my attempts to have Elliott feel comfortable in front of the camera. So when I was preparing my questions, he will tell me those are the same questions everybody has asked me over 50, 60 years of my career. And then if I didn't prepare my questions, he would say, why are you not preparing the questions? Why are you improvising so much? So this attempt was, okay, so I will remain silent, sitting in the couch and see what happens. And that's what happened. So this is part of the unexpected and the beauty of documentary.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and it's really an honor to be here, and I absolutely love your film, Adriana, so it's very special to hear more about the making of it. And so for this film, 1000 Stories, it actually came to be very serendipitously. I had followed JR's work for many years and had been very passionate about the intersection of art for social justice, using that lens throughout my photography and film. His work had been a huge inspiration of mine. And then I live in San Francisco at the moment. I'm in LA on a distanced shoot on assignment, but I was walking through San Francisco, and it was actually happened to be the first day of this mural project. And I happened upon this 53-foot truck with a pasting of black and white eyes on the side of it, and recognized it as JR's work. And so approached the truck and immediately was greeted by JR and his team, who invited me inside. And so I actually had that first experience of being, I think I was number 3 or 4 of the very first participants in the piece. And so upon coming into the truck, you know, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't know much about what the project would be, and was greeted by his team and saw that they had transformed the inside of this truck into a green screen studio, which was really incredible to just start to see the process as I was participating in the piece. And then afterwards, I came out of the truck and went through the experience of sharing my story and meeting with Eyal, who is the sound recordist, recording all the stories for the piece. So, you know, as I was about to leave, they had asked me what I do and what I'm passionate about, and I started to talk about documentary work. And then I looked around and realized that no one was documenting this experience and this process. And so, you know, I told them about the work that I do as a documentarian on the spot, and that I would love to come back the next day and start recording. And so thankfully JR was on board, and I came back the next day with my camera in hand and then just started following as much of the process as I could, which was really, really, so incredibly special to just get to see the different stories unfold in person. And so with creating this piece, I really wanted to be able to amplify what was so special and unique about that process, to really hear 1,000 stories from 1,000 different people. So I really aim to create the piece in a very observational verite way, but leading people throughout the process, much like I experienced as one of the first participants in the piece. And so, the film follows JR's work in bringing together his Chronicles of San Francisco art piece. And in the making of this piece, he documented over 1,200 people into one work of art. And many of these participants happened upon the project in the same way I did, where they just noticed the truck, were curious, came up to it, and then were all of a sudden a part of this art piece that will hopefully live on for many, many years to come.
Everyone have been amazing. Everyone have been, yeah, man, just place me wherever you want. Knowing and trusting in the project because they couldn't see exactly how they're going to be incorporated in. So it was this constant discussion of trying to find their narrative and for me to build the script of the mural through the narrative of the people.
Thank you, Tasha. So audience, if you want to start submitting questions, this is the part where you can kind of pick the brain of both of these directors. I would love to start off with asking both of you, I mean, both of you seem to have kind of come into these films unexpectedly. So I was wondering if you guys could both kind of speak about some unexpected outcomes of the process of creating these, and something that happened that maybe you didn't expect to happen. Adriana, do you want to go first? As I know this was your first film.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, unexpected definitely happened in many steps of the film. Also the beginning of the process, the beginning of the film itself came unexpectedly because what happened is I had shown Elliott some of the images I've taken over our, during our travels. Some of them I've shared here. And one day while we were having, breakfast together, this comes in the film in a reduced version of it. And I was showing him the photos and I was telling him, what do you think? I would like to make a little, a little carnet de voyage, a little like personal travel diary with you, like something fun. And then he said, why don't you make a documentary? And that was really before I croak. Why don't you make a documentary before I croak? And that, I didn't, I've never made a documentary where that came from. And that came from, the context of that was that at that moment they had proposed him to go on this trip to Cuba. He hadn't been back in 50 years. And due to his age and some physical challenges, it wasn't very clear that he was going to be able to go to that trip and do one more, engaging project like that. But he wanted to, absolutely. So the moment he saw that horizon of the Cuba trip, I think that something make him, wanna capture the adventure, and he invited me to do it. So I say, well, if you're going and you're up to this, let's do it. I have no clue how I'm gonna do it, but let's start. So the trip was coming up. So the documentary started with no script, no nothing. There was just, okay, let's document this, this moment of Elliott Erwitt engaging in a new project one more time. And I'll do it the best way I can, as I said, in my personal, my personal approach of this fantastic artist and person. So that was the unexpected. And then the unexpected second part, one was the beginning and then was the process, which during the process, I realized that many of the moments we had shared candidly, and he's openly expressed his opinions about things, or we, share statements about our favorite things, or the artists that we love, or the this or that. When I will ask him that in front of the camera, he didn't want to respond. He was vague, he was reluctant, he didn't want to be pinpoint, he was very careful about how I'm going to be remembered. I've already spoken about this before, or I don't want to, commit to this, or I don't want. So there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of doubt about, why should I define myself now when I've already done it through my whole career? So that was also unexpected, and that brought a lot of creativity in how to approach him in different ways. That was not our usual way to, I couldn't translate literally, or I couldn't translate those moments shared and then put in a camera and capture them. We had, I had to do a lot of things around that to catch him.
But the way you edit it, I mean, I feel like that tension is definitely shown. I mean, you can see his reluctance to give those kind of answers that you're like, you've answered this before, just say it.
Yes.
And so I think, I think including your voice and your perspective and kind of almost the making of it, you do get across that is what he's doing. He is hyper aware of your camera and trying to.
He is, yes.
It.
And there was certain versions of the film that were even more focused on that tension. Mm-hmm. But then there was a point where I had to accept that I will never be able to completely share the person you've spent time with, for 3 years, in so many moments. When you travel with someone, you develop a certain complicity and a certain way of spending time with each other that is very different than going into someone's life momentarily to document them for a specific project. Here there was somebody I had already shared a lot of our lives, and then all of a sudden I want to capture him in film. So there was a time where there was, a cut of the film that had to do a lot with that tension. But then I realized, okay, let's focus on what he's giving, even if what he's giving is silence or avoiding an answer. That's part of who he is, and that tells us a lot about who he is, instead of just hoping that he would answer the way he had answered in other moments or in other. So that was an interesting challenge to also change the perspective on what you expect, how you approach. And that happens all the time in life, and especially in documentary that is so connected with life, that things that you cannot control, and they just happen, and you just have to accommodate and be open, to receive them in the way they appear.
And Tasha, what about you? Kind of stumbling upon JR and then all of a sudden taking on a documentary. I mean, that's unexpected to begin with, but in the process and maybe after the process, what's been some unexpected outcomes?
Yeah, so I mean, I really agree with what Adriana was saying about staying open throughout the process of it, because documentary is so much about following that unexpected turn of events and just being really in tune and mindful of what direction you're going to go next. And I mean, yeah, it really started that way from the beginning, just stumbling upon the truck and walking and being a part of this process. But then, throughout the process, every step of the way, I was so surprised by the answers of every person that came in. Every single person had something unexpected to share and a new perspective that I hadn't thought of before, especially in the city. So to hear such a range of ideas and voices and perspectives and stories was really special. And also the process was, I just think, so fascinating about how they really brought the studio to people. And, every day or every other day, they were moving the truck to a different location. So we were really able to meet with a range of voices from throughout the city, which was really incredible. And then I think, what was also unexpected is going into it, I had no idea what the final piece would look like. And so to finally see that final mural piece was really, I just felt very awestruck to see how all of these individual people and voices were brought into this one work of art that felt so holistic and cohesive throughout. And so to see that was very, very powerful. And at the piece ended up being in SF MoMA. And JR actually displayed the piece on these large LED screens. I believe they were around 100 feet long. So it was really immersive. And when you go up to the screen, it feels like everyone is life size. And then you're able to, through an app, click and hear from the voices of each of the people as you look at this piece. So that was, to see it from start to finish, and then to see what it would become, where you could really go and immerse yourself in these stories and meet all of these people throughout this project, was just very spectacular to see. And on the opening night at SF MoMA, so many of the participants came, and you could see them interacting with one another and talking to each other about how they heard each other's stories, and, you know, or they recognized each other from coming in and out of the truck. And to see those interactions and the way that it kept evolving afterwards was really just so special to be able to witness that. And then, you know, this project was the first now of many collaborations with JR, which has been really an incredible journey. And so after this San Francisco mural project, we've gone on, we actually, he did a project in Cuba a few months ago, so we went there, and then did the Guns in America project, and worked on the Chronicles of New York City project in the post-production side. So yeah, it's just been very serendipitous to be able to follow this journey from walking into the truck on that first day.
You both work with, you know, such big artists that have, you know, really strong visions. How has that collaboration process been for you both? And have there been moments where you feel like, you know, you're influenced by their work, but maybe they're also influenced by your process?
Tasha?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think, you know, I think what's so special about working with JR is that he is very open and he's very collaborative. So he does have this incredibly strong, unique vision, and he can look at things in such a different way. I mean, to be able to witness that firsthand and document that has been very just extraordinary, to see the way that he can really look at the world as this canvas, and has this kind of larger than life perspective with art, which is really, I think, unique. And then on, you know, on my side of things, I really, I try to be collaborative as well. And really, I think we both have a dedication to process. So for him and his artwork, he creates these incredible pieces where the final piece is stunning. But it's the process that also, you know, he says in the film, 1000 Stories, it's the process that's more important than the final piece. And I think he really follows that mantra. And so every step of the way, he is interacting with people and building relationships and building connections. And additionally, he does that with his team. So, you know, it's been very special to collaborate together on these processes, and just to be a part of that process.
And how much, I mean, how much input did he have throughout the process? I'm curious with both JR and Elliott, you know, how much of a hand did they want to have in the way you both were going to tell their stories?
Well, in my part, he wanted to have a certain, you know, a certain I would say control. You know, he's a person that is usually, he is the one that directs, he is the one behind the camera, you know. So it was very hard for him to let go. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges and the biggest lessons we experienced together. It was for him to let me lead, you know, allow him to dance together and let me be the lead. And so initially he wanted to, and he wanted to have, you know, a saying on the final cut of the film, etc. But I told Elliott, you know, that's not possible. I mean, you need to trust, you need to let go and let me do my portrait. At the end of the day, it's a personal portrait. It's not your official portrait of the historical tale of your life, of your professional career, etc. It's just my vision. So that's, you know, and he did. But that was, you know, that was a challenge. So he wanted to. We did our adjustments, and we found a way where he was able to let go and trust. And thankfully, he didn't regret.
And Tasha, what about you?
Hopefully, it's not too noisy here. There's some sounds on the street, but yeah, I mean, it was our first collaboration, and it was really great because JR was very open, and, you know, he was so focused on his process of creating this piece. I think it was also unexpected as it was for me to begin following this journey. They weren't expecting to have anyone document it. So I really was able to kind of be in my own little world, you know, being as collaborative as I could be, but really just observing the process unfold, which was great because there was so much action happening each day and with all the participants that I really could kind of take this fly on the wall verite approach. But then, you know, in the post-production process as well, I had so much footage because the creation of the mural itself was 30 days long, and I was trying to be there as much as possible. And so, you know, when I was rolling, because I really wanted to be able to capture these little moments between people of interaction, I had a lot of footage. And so, you know, really in the post-production, I worked with a wonderful editor who's a close collaborator of mine, Dana Lamont. And we started to kind of build this narrative with the process through the perspective of what it's like to participate in the mural itself. And then, you know, I showed JR a rough cut towards the end, and he, you know, was really supportive of the direction that we had gone. So I think with that piece, it was really simple on that front because it was the short piece about the process. But, you know, as collaborative as we could make it.
Do you want to talk about your next projects?
Yes, my next project, well, I'm starting another portrait about another artist, but this one I never met him, only his work, and he's no longer amongst us in the physical form. So it's an interesting, a very, very different approach. I don't really want to share much because I'm really, really at the beginning of the, you know, of the first steps of this project. I'm just now immersed on the research and looking at, you know, this is a Argentinian artist that migrated to Paris, and he was like a cartoonist and a theater playwright, and a very polyphacetic artist that was also in the movement of the transsexuals, but you know, well, it has a lot of angles, so very complex character. His name is Copy, and I'm really at the first steps, and it's going to be a production with a Spanish and Argentinian and French co-production. So, but my main actual project is that I just had a child, and he's 1 month old. So I accomplished my photograph that Elliott gave me. He's hanging in my house of the mother, baby, and cat. And I'm ready to remake it. And that's my actual current project. It takes a lot of energy and time, very happily.
Tasha, welcome back.
Sorry about that.
Okay. something in the wavelengths today.
But what I was saying before I hopped off is that I'm currently working on a feature with JR about the Tehachapi prison project. And so I'm in LA at the moment, but based in San Francisco. And then additionally, I'm in post-production on my first feature doc called After Antarctica, which follows the life of a polar explorer who did the longest crossing of Antarctica in history 30 years ago, but in the 30 years since that crossing, the 3 ice shelves he crossed have disintegrated. So it's a very personal look into the climate crisis. And then also working on a few short projects right now, and JR and I are currently in post on a short doc about his Cuba project that we filmed several months ago.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for giving us some behind the scenes insight onto both of these amazing films. Best of luck on your current and upcoming projects. And thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Bye-bye.
Bye.